This is a Dakota News Now special report.
Good evening. Welcome to Dakota News Now. I'm Brian Allen, and we're joined this evening by Republican candidate for U.S. Senate Justin McNeal, who's coming to us tonight from Rapid City. Mr. McNeal, thank you for making time for us.
Well, I appreciate you, Brian, and thank you for allowing the access to your viewers.
You bet. You do have a military background. You served some time in the early 2000s, I believe, in the United States Navy. And now you are an active businessman out west, wherever you operate Dakota Biochar. What is your interest in politics, though? Given that background, what about right now said to you, I want to run, I need to run for the United States Senate?
You know, that's a good question. People ask me that all the time. And, Justin, you got a really nice life. Why would you, go away from that and get into politics? And my why is because I'm concerned about the U.S. federal debt. When I first started looking to get in politics 2 years ago, that federal debt was $35 trillion. Now, just 2 short years later, that debt is $39 trillion. Just the interest payments alone are now greater than defense spending. It's what we're going to pass down to the next generation. I firmly believe it's going to cripple this country, and it doesn't seem like anybody's talking about it. Anybody has a plan. In my time as a certified financial planner, working with hundreds, if not thousands of families, it's the closer and closer we get to that inevitable doomsday, the fewer and fewer options that we're going to have. And so, I would just like to rely on my background to try to make a difference in that arena and in that area.
What would your political style be, Justin? For example, are you one of those Republicans that wants to go it alone? Do you have the ability to reach across the aisle and work with Democrats? What would define your leadership style if you had to sort of put it into words?
Yeah, so I kind of look at the U.S. Senate. So there's 100 senators. On a submarine, we had 120 people. I knew every single person's name, their wife's name, their kids' names, their date of birth. And we were able to collectively come together as that 120 and accomplish amazing things or accomplish the mission that was at hand. And I foresee, I guess, my leadership style or how I would like to work in that same way. Getting to work with each one of those individuals. We have a constitution at the end of the day that lines out what the federal government is supposed to be doing for us. I would just, not kind of really focus on the partisan divides that come up and just really focus on what the federal government's supposed to be doing for us. And then engaging and motivating my fellow senators to getting that done.
This is probably a bit of an unfair question. I'm going to try to ask it anyway, though. Given the world that we live in right now, what is issue number one for you? Is it that deficit? When you hit the ground running in Washington, you want to tackle what right away?
Yeah, the debt is the first thing. We have to start talking about that immediately. We can't address the debt until we address the 3 big ticket items, which is Social Security, health care, and defense spending. I have a background in all 3 of those. Social Security is going to run out of money in 6 years. By 2032, it's only 75% funded. It's not like the government can sit there and say, well, this is the 75% of people that are going to get benefits. It's just going to be a complete shutdown of the system. The closer and closer we get to that 2032, the fewer and fewer options that we're going to have. I'd like to rely on my time as a certified financial planner. What I found in talking over to hundreds of families in that business was that everybody is willing to do the hard things now so they can have an easier time later. And they just need to be presented with a plan and what that looks like. So that's the Social Security aspect of it. The healthcare side, healthcare is the one thing that is going up by double digits every single year for the past decade. We got to ask ourselves, well, is there something that's making Americans more unhealthy? I think that there potentially is. That's why we started Dakota Biochar, was to improve soil health, which can in turn, grow better food, which in turn will hopefully make us all healthier. We have to look at the administration cost. I sat on the board for an international healthcare organization, and it was just a charity hospital system. And we saw, after the Affordable Health Care Act came out, the cost of our care to provide the same level of care tripled. So, we need to take a look at the administration of that health care. If the focus or the goal is to provide health care from a doctor to a patient, then our resources should be going to that end and not to the overarching system that is there that just increases costs for everything. And then third is military spending, defense spending. I was in the military for 6 years. I served aboard the USS Key West. It's a fast attack nuclear submarine out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Every year come September, because the fiscal year ends in September, every year, we'd find that, hey, we had to use up a budget or else we'd lose it next year. So guess what ended up happening? We ended up spending a whole bunch of money that we did not necessarily need to keep that going. Now, that's not to say that we should limit or handicap our service members or the Department of Defense from the resources that they need, but we should probably get to a zero-based budget instead of just these crazy appropriations that just happen that aren't based on need going forward.
Republican candidate for United States Senate Justin McNeal. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back right here on Dakota News Now. And welcome back to Dakota News Now. We're speaking this evening with Republican candidate for United States Senate Justin McNeal. He is in Rapid City tonight. The military actions against Iran, do you support that as we go forward? Should we pull out? Should we pull back? Where are you on that?
Well, that's a very good question. As a former military guy, I guess if I look at it from an overarching standpoint, I think of the 90 million people that are in that country that are suffering right now. And is that what's needed? 90 million people that are going to be without energy, without water, without a food supply. That's 90 million people that are suffering. That there's obviously definitely you want to stop the nuclear proliferation amongst bad actors. So if this was a regime change idea to prevent a certain regime to gain nuclear weapons, then I think it would have been nicer to have a more clear, drawn-out plan of how that was going to work. My concern with this whole thing is that we're going to have 90 million new enemies. The way this whole thing is kind of posturing is that it's shaping up that the entire continent of Asia is becoming enemies of ours. Half the world's population, 4 billion people, live on that continent. So what's the end strategy? What's the end game here? Peace and trading with people is always much better than going to war. I spent 3.5 years of my life never seeing the sun. I'm way too old to be to be going back to war or to be doing that. Who is going to be doing that work?
All right, we are speaking this evening with United States Senate candidate Justin McNeal. We will take a quick break and be back right after this on Dakota News Now. And we welcome you back to Dakota News Now. We're spending some time tonight with Republican candidate for United States Senate Justin McNeal. He's in Rapid City tonight. I want to ask you about agricultural trade and the state of that right now. As we sit here, and you kind of have a front row seat to this, being a businessman, so I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. What are your concerns as we sit here about international trade? Have we burned bridges through tariffs? Have we not? What do you think as we sit here right now?
Well, I've always been a free market guy, so I believe in the invisible hand of the free market, allowing a supply. So if that's farmers that are producing a crop for that supply, and then that enters a market into the demand side, and then you have an agreed upon exchange for those goods or services based on what the market is providing. The things that you just brought up about tariffs and international trade deals, that's all government meddling that kind of inserts itself as the middleman between the producer and the end consumer or the end buyer. I think the more and more that we tinker or we tip the scales with private industry or with the free market, you're going to see, you just naturally see more and more long-term effects that happen with that. in my experience traveling the state, not only on the political side, but on my business side with the Dakota Biochar, I call South Dakota the leave us alone state. In my discussions with people just want to have government that kind of gets out of their way and doesn't hinder them. I'm the similar way in my business, just kind of let's unleash the American people and the American producer and the American consumer to operate and exchange with one another on terms that they see fit, not something that the government's setting up for them.
Because it seems that whenever we have these trade skirmishes, let's call them, with other companies, for example, with China, it seems that when these things pop up, that it's Brazil that ends up benefiting. The amount of market share that Brazil is getting from increasing their soybean exports to China comes as the direct result of trade issues between the United States and China.
So I think you just said it there yourself. So that is the effects of government intervention into the free market. So the market now is cheaper for to get those goods or services from Brazil instead of homegrown American soybeans, and so that's why you see the shift there.
All right, we are speaking this evening with United States Senate candidate Justin McNeal. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right here on Dakota News Now. Welcome back to Dakota News Now. We're speaking this evening with Republican candidate for United States Senate Justin McNeal. Transparency and Washington, those words don't necessarily go hand in hand. Do you have concerns about that?
One thing that my father taught me when I was a young boy, he said, Justin, people deserve the truth so they can act accordingly. I can't necessarily speak to everybody else in Washington, but as far as transparency, one thing I am committed to doing whenever I get to D.C. is every single thing that I vote on, I'm going to give an explanation on why I voted on it that way. Now, you can agree with me, disagree with me on that, but you're going to have the information of the reasons to why it is I chose to make that vote, and I'm committed to doing that. Other things as far as transparency, I'll put my full budget, everything that I spend the public money on, that'll get put out to the public. And again, good, bad, or indifferent, you can argue with me, you can agree with me, you can disagree with me, but I'm going to empower you with the information that you can then use to make a choice or a decision to then act upon. I think there's just this big disconnect between people that are in elected office and we the people, and it's not necessarily to say that there's something nefarious or bad or evil doing going on, but people should at least have the truth so they can act accordingly.
I'd like to talk to you about your decision making for a second here, Justin, because I always think this is interesting. It's a big decision to seek political office in general, to seek political office in Washington. It's not an easy decision. Were there points during this decision making process where you said, I'm not going to do it, or were you fairly positive throughout the entire process?
I don't know how much everybody knows about my stint in politics here, but 2 years ago, I was concerned about the debt. I made a decision. I was like, okay, you know what? I think it's gone too far. I want to try to do something about this. I literally sat down in front of a computer and I Googled, how do you run for the United States Congress? I looked it up. I filed the appropriate paperwork. 3 days later, I got a call from the incumbent welcoming me to the race. I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Okay. And then, we went all the way to the Supreme Court trying to get on the ballot. We collected more signatures than everybody else combined to get on the ballot. We were denied ballot access. I was under investigation for 3 different felonies, which was all lawfare related. Gandhi had this great saying. He said there's 4 steps to change. First, they ignore you. Second, they laugh at you. Third, they attack you. And then fourth, the change happens. So, in that last cycle, I was like, oh, wow, we skipped step 1 and 2, and we jumped straight to step 3. So, that was kind of self-validating to me that, okay, well, we must be onto something. If they're attacking and fighting me this hard, then we must be onto something. And, at the end of the day, I truly believe that we, the people, get better government when we are involved in that government. And, I want to inspire and motivate others. We got 330 million people in this country, and we're going to get a better government if we're able to unlock that human capital potential of the 330 million people that live in this country to take a little piece of that government, take a little bit of ownership, and make it better. So that's all. That's another thing that I want to do. In this race and as a U.S. Senator, is empower the electorate, empower the people to be the change they wish to see in the world.
Justin, real quick, we have about a minute left in this segment. When you're out there on the campaign trail talking to voters, what are they asking you, or what are they wanting you to know? What do they convey to you as the candidate?
I had brought up earlier, South Dakota's the leave us alone state. People just they want to be able to pursue their happiness. They want to raise their families, and at the federal level, they just feel more and more of the federal overreach into their daily lives in South Dakota. And one of the things I talk is, I don't want to be one of 330 million people. I don't want to be, I would prefer to be one of 1 million people that are here in South Dakota, and more so, I want to be one of 80,000 that's here in Rapid City. So I want the most amount of government at the local level. That way I can go affect the change, in that government. And so, that's what I kind of hear resounding more and more. We saw it with, eminent domain use, for the pipelines, 2 years ago. And you still see that with the federal government pushing down with the 45Q tax credits. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't be sovereign in your own property and have the right or the ability to grow and to try your hand at, to improve that and make a living off of it, and somebody can just come in there and take it, that's just un-American. And so, I think that's, one big thing that I hear resounding is just the continual federal overreach into our day-to-day lives in South Dakota.
And we'll wrap up with Justin McNeal right after this on Dakota News Now. Welcome back to Dakota News Now as we wrap up this evening with Republican candidate for United States Senate, Justin McNeal. Between now and primary day, Justin, what does that look like? Are you out there on the road every day?
Every single day. So I'm taking my little plane and we're flying all over the state. We've attended over 80 different events, meeting you all, we the people. And, we've been working hard to try to get a debate so that the electorate can see a clear difference between ourselves and the incumbent. We've been working hard on that debate to get that through different channels. I think the only way that we're going to get there is we the people calling that office and saying that you'd like to see that debate. So, I'd appreciate your help on that. Other than that, please let me know of any events that are coming up that you feel that I should be at. I will make a point to be there. My website's justinmcneal.com. All of our social medias are Justin McNeal _US Senate. Send me a text, email. I respond to all of them. Send me smoke signals. We'll get back to you.
All right. We've appreciated the time with you this evening, Justin. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
You bet. Justin McNeal, Republican candidate for United States Senate, as we head toward primary election day here in South Dakota. I'm Brian Allen, and thank you for being with us here tonight on Dakota News Now.